At approximately 3 in the morning, the internet becomes quieter but not emptier. Human activity drops sharply. Logins slow. Comments stop. Browsers close. Yet, server demand does not fall. Instead, a different kind of traffic takes over. Automated systems continue working at full capacity, indexing pages that were never shared, re-evaluating content that failed earlier visibility checks, testing recommendation paths no one is currently following, scanning behavior patterns that no one is generating. This happens every night. What changes at this hour is not volume, it is supervision. During this window, pages appear that will not survive daylight. Accounts exist long enough to be indexed, then vanish. Files are uploaded, accessed once, and never requested again. Most of these artifacts leave no trace, no archive, no record, no explanation. The unsettling detail is not that this happens. It is that the system behaves as if it expects someone to be there when it does. The internet was not built to be observed continuously. It was designed to function autonomously. Its earliest architecture prioritized resilience, not transparency. Machines were expected to communicate without interruption, even in the absence of human oversight. Failure was anticipated. Silence was normal. When public access expanded, human presence layered itself onto systems never meant to slow down or explain themselves. Indexing changed everything. Search engines turned addresses into destinations. Discovery became automatic. Visibility became an algorithmic outcome rather than a deliberate act. As content volume grew beyond human review, ranking systems took over. Popularity, engagement, and predicted relevance became proxies for value. Material that failed these tests did not disappear, but it stopped being reachable. This created a structural blind spot. Information could exist online without being visible, searchable, or persistent. It could pass through the system briefly and leave without resistance. Over time, this behavior became predictable. Certain content was more likely to surface when demand was low, when fewer users were generating competing signals, when moderation queues were thinner and automated thresholds were relaxed. 3 in the morning emerged not as a myth, but as a statistical window, a period where the internet is still running, but less observed. Over the last decade, independent cybersecurity researchers began documenting a pattern that did not align with normal indexing behavior. Anomalous pages, sites with no inbound links, no discoverable ownership, and no engagement history were appearing disproportionately during low traffic hours. These pages shared striking similarities: minimal structure, plain backgrounds, sparse text, no branding, no ads, no navigation. Some contained strings of numbers or fragmented sentences that resisted interpretation. Others displayed content that shifted depending on location, device, or time of access. A small number included accurate personal details that had never been published elsewhere. Most disappeared within hours. Attempts to archive them often failed. Cached versions expired unusually fast. Screenshots were inconsistent. Metadata changed between refreshes. The anomaly was not the existence of strange content. It was the repetition. The same hour, the same structural characteristics, the same disappearance, and the same reports from those who encountered them. A persistent sense that the content was not meant to inform, persuade, or entertain. It felt provisional, as if it had surfaced by mistake or for a reason unrelated to being read. Search engines operate continuously but not evenly. Crawling and indexing cycles shift based on global demand. During peak hours, systems prioritize speed, stability, and suppression of low-confidence material. During off-peak hours, priorities change. Maintenance tasks run, models are retrained, edge cases are tested. Content that fails standard visibility thresholds can surface briefly not because it is promoted, but because the system is reassessing whether it should exist at all. No human reviews these moments. Automation evaluates structure, metadata, and behavior patterns, not intent. Context is irrelevant. When content is engineered to resemble an edge case ambiguous enough to evade suppression, Structured enough to trigger indexing, it can appear temporarily before being removed. This is not an error. It is a consequence of scale. 3 in the morning is when the system asks its quietest questions. The human exploitation layer. Some individuals learn to operate inside this window, not for exposure, for isolation. Pages designed for a single visit, files accessible only once, sites that altered their content based on who was looking. Examples include pages that display different text depending on IP range, or links that expired after a specific fingerprint was detected. These techniques were used for many reasons: testing surveillance boundaries, exchanging information without persistence, creating experiences that could not be verified after the fact, and, in some cases, deliberately unsettling whoever encountered them. No conspiracy was required, only familiarity with how the system behaves when no one is watching. The algorithmic feedback layer, the most opaque layer, involves content with no clear author. Modern platforms deploy generative systems continuously, not to create narratives, but to optimize behavior. Language fragments, layout variations, interaction tests. Most outputs are never intended for public view. They exist to train other systems. Occasionally, these outputs escape containment, not through malfunction, but through porous boundaries between testing and production environments. When this happens, the resulting content feels incomplete, purposeful but not communicative, specific but not personal. These fragments are not messages, they are measurements. They test how systems respond, how users behave, whether something is noticed before it disappears. This explains why some pages feel unsettling without saying anything overtly disturbing. They were not designed to be understood. They were designed to be detected. Why simple explanations fail. Hoaxes cannot explain the consistency. Random errors cannot explain the timing. And intentional secrecy cannot explain the absence of clear outcomes. The phenomenon exists because automation, human behavior, and scale intersect in ways that resist oversight. No single actor controls it, but the system continues to allow it. The impact is easy to dismiss because it leaves no archive. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Transient content shapes training data. Training data shapes systems. Systems shape visibility. In cybersecurity, this creates blind spots where infrastructure exists briefly and disappears before analysis can begin. In information governance, it complicates accountability. Content can surface without authorship, intent, or persistence. Culturally, it introduces a quiet instability, not panic, not paranoia. A recognition that the internet is not a fixed record, but a process, one that produces artifacts even when no one is meant to see them. Major platforms acknowledge the existence of transient indexing artifacts, though details remain limited. Logging has improved. Some containment measures exist, automation has not slowed. Systems are larger, faster, and more opaque than before. Oversight is statistical, retrospective, partial. There is no evidence of coordination behind these phenomena. There is also no structural reason for them to stop. The internet continues to generate content that was never meant to persist, at times when almost no one is present to observe it. Shortly before dawn, automated cycles conclude. Temporary pages are removed, marginal content is buried, logs overwrite themselves, test outputs expire. By morning, the visible internet appears unchanged. Nothing seems missing. But stability is not completeness. It only reflects what remains. Transient artifacts leave no record, yet they influence the systems that decide what survives. What lingers is not the idea that something strange appears online at night. It is the realization that the infrastructure permits things to exist briefly, without witnesses, without authors, and without memory. And once a system learns that something can appear and disappear without consequence, it rarely unlearns that behavior.